Hey everyone, welcome to the saltwater version of the weekly update. I am standing here where the old plant system used to be. We're getting ready to expand the aquatic section of the store, so that is definitely something you want to pay close attention to in the weeks to come. Hopefully, as this part of the store changes, you'll see a new island of fish, saltwater fish. We're trying to kind of broaden things and bring even more of a selection. And speaking of the selection that we have this week, Reagan got in a ton of fish, and we have 10 of her top picks to show you, as well as some of mine. So let's get right into the video. All right, number one on Reagan's list is the Anthias eating filefish. We use these guys a lot in service. They'll blend in very well to the whole environment, but the number one thing is they eat glass anemones or Anthias. Any type of problem that you have with them, these are great for. I've only had one instance out of all the different ones that I've sold where they ate something other than the Anthias. They typically will leave corals alone, and they'll adapt readily to normal foods as well. But the one thing that they do better than anything else is eat Anthias. Okay, a fish we don't have in very often is the blue-faced tilefish. A lot of tilefishes like to hide, stay under rocks and things like that. Not so with this particular fish. It's been out since it came in. Very, very beautiful fish, very peaceful fish. Would make a great reef fish. Pretty hardy for the most part, and a fish you don't see too terribly often. One of my favorite Anthias is the sunburst Anthias, also called the fathead Anthias, just because its whole body is kind of compact. It is a deep water Anthias, so one that's not so much near the surface where you typically get most of your Anthias in this hobby. It is exceptionally beautiful and well worth its price, both because it's hardy and because it's got color that you don't typically see. These fish typically come in readily feeding. You can also see the Blenny Tang, who obviously wants to be in the picture. Another wonderful, wonderful Tang. But the fathead or the sunburst Anthias is definitely one of my top picks because it is a great showy reef fish that, despite its size, stays out a good bit. Very young firefin to mini Tang came in this week. Definitely one of my top picks just because of its hardiness. Also because it is very adaptable in a lot of different situations. In a normal fish-only system or in a reef system. Very compatible with other fish, whether they be lightly aggressive or very, very complacent and sweet. It is a great fish. Okay, another one of Reagan's top picks is the Harlequin Sweetlips. Not the easiest fish to keep, I will tell you that. But if you are a seasoned aquarist, this is one that's worth trying, both because of its swimming pattern as it kind of goes back and forth, because of its color and because of its uniqueness. It is very eye-catching in almost any reef aquarium or in any fish-only aquarium. The big thing with them is getting them to eat. This guy's only been in here for a few hours, so we'll test that and kind of see how he's doing. But occasionally, if I know the distributor and a good healthy specimen comes through, we do try to stock it. Not a fish we have often for that reason, but if you're in the market and willing to try, this could be a very, very cool fish for you. I always love showing reef wrasses whenever they come in, both because they typically will have some of the best color, they have the most complacent disposition. This is the pink margin fairy wrasse, a very affordable wrasse that will give you a lot of pleasure looking at on your reef. Again, very peaceful, but stays out. Typically these reef wrasses come in very hardy. We have very, very good luck with them, especially after placing them at least in my service accounts and things like that. So a great fish. Okay, Reagan's favorite fish, and if you watch the freshwater update, one I stuck in there, is the blue line triggerfish, Pseudoballistes fuscus. It's also probably one of my favorite of the triggerfish. It is a showy fish. Aggressive, of course. I would not recommend this for any reef tank unless you've got a reef tank that has 0 invertebrates. It can get a little bit of a mean disposition, but boy is it beautiful. Blues, yellows, honeycombed throughout the body, bright blue turquoise eyes, and a very, very hardy species of triggerfish. So if you've got a fish-only system or you've got an aggressive system, you would be hard-pressed to find any better fish than the blue line trigger. This little munchkin is the small clown trigger, Belastoides conspiculum, another one of my favorite trigger fish, and a very long-lived, very hardy trigger fish. It's probably, in terms of collectability in the hobby, it's very, very few fish that are more beautiful than this as it ages. I've got one in a service account right now that is got all its adult colors in, and it is just a striking fish to see. So if you've got an aggressive tank or you're building a fish-only system, you might want to try the clown trigger. I have a fairly large juvenile Koran that came in this week. It has not started changing into the adult colors despite its size. So if you want a very affordable, larger bodied angelfish, this would be a great one. Okay, we get in cool fish all the time, and this pair of adult snowflake clowns is phenomenal. It is a pair, and we are selling them together. They have been raised up in a customer's tank, but we usually don't see them this healthy, this big. So if you're in the market for a wow factor clownfish pair, these snowflakes would be perfect. We got in small coral beauties this week. One of the things about these particular coral beauties that came in is the electric blue toward the base and the caudal tail. This is the perfect size, perfect time to put them in just about any environment. It is my #1 angel for having in any saltwater tank. Why? One, because it is extremely hardy, very adaptable. Two, it is very affordable. It's one of the cheapest angelfish you could buy. And three, it is probably one of the most long-lived angelfish you could buy. It'll do well in almost any kind of tank with the exception of an extremely aggressive tank. However, it'll even live with some aggressive fish, depending on how it's put in. It's a centropyge or a dwarf angel, so it's not going to get very big. And the ones that came in this week for the price are excellent starter angelfish. Another one of Reagan's picks is the golden head sleeper goby, and I have to say I agree. This is a fish that never stops churning the sand. It will pick up sand constantly, as I'm sure you might get a chance to see if the orange shoulder tang will leave them alone. They will burrow and build a cave just like the diamonds will, but they stay very consistent as far as sand sifting. So if you have sand on the bottom that needs to be sifted, this is a great fish. It will spend almost all of its time on the bottom, so it's also great for that reason as well. Okay, we're going to have to film this guy fast. This is the yellow banded possum wrasse. It is a smaller type of wrasse that is very, very unique, very, very beautiful, and likes to play possum. And I want to show you also his little companion here in the tank is a beautiful, beautiful yellow mimic tang. I talk about mimic tangs a lot just because of their hardiness. They come in almost every time already eating. They're not very shy in the beginning, so their adaptability is very quick. This is a great, great tang to have in just about any tank. A cool reef starfish that came in is the double starfish. Why? Because it has two stars, both its body shape and the star in the center. Very cool, and typically a pretty hardy starfish that does not get very big. All in all, a great addition of an invertebrate to your tank. I love gobies, I love blennies. Why? Because they have such great personalities, and they all kind of look and remind me of every Dr. Seuss character that there is. This is the Aurora Goby. One of my favorites just because of the color scheme. Most gobies and blennies that you'll see us stock are very hardy, and for gobies, typically long-lived. So if you've got a reef tank and you want something that's going to not only add color and a specific look, but also add a lot of personality to your tank, this would be a great goby. Okay, these little guys poking their heads out of the rock also show what I was saying, just about just the personality. I mean, these guys are great. This is a small version of goby, or a blenny, I'm sorry, called the tail spot blenny. Why? Because it has a spot on its tail. So aptly named, but a lot of personality with these guys, and you can see them poking out of every little crevice of every little rock, and they'll do the same in your tank. No, they don't have bright blue and yellow colors, but what they do lack in being super colorful, they more than make up for in their personalities. And this is something where you can kind of play Where's Waldo in your tank. Gold Midas Blenny. Now this is a beautiful type of Blenny that will actually kind of come out into the water. It doesn't just hang out in the rocks where you never see it, as a lot of Blennies and Gobies can sometimes do. The Midas is a little bit more forthright, kind of comes out when you do the feeding, and you'll see them very, very much. You can also see a pistol shrimp hanging in there with him. We tend to try to always have the yellow chorus wrasses, but the one thing that we don't have with more availability are the green chorus wrasses. Very similar in their activities, burying themselves in the sand, typical chorus wrasse behavior, but these are really pretty. And I got 2 of them in this week, I think, so I wanted to show you these as well. Always show the Bangui Cardinals and the Pajama Cardinals, and for a change it's been really nice because we got in these striped Cardinals. This again is another type of fish that you can school in a saltwater tank. Whereas because of size restrictions for the average aquarist tank, you can't typically school like you can with freshwater, but this is a fish you can. And that's what makes the family of the smaller cardinal fish so wonderful. I always like to show these crabs when they come in because you can easily miss them. And even we can miss them when we forget that we have them. This is the decorator crab, and so aptly named because it will go around the tank and pick up things that it will decorate itself with. As you can see, this guy right here has sponges on him. He has all kind of stuff to kind of camouflage himself away from predators. It's very spider-like in appearance, but they're very harmless. They will put corals on their back and walk around the tank with them. Anything they can to disguise themselves from any type of predators or things like that. You will easily lose it in your tank, then all of a sudden one day see a part of the reef move, walk across the sand, and realize you have a decorator crab. Very, very cool, and you want to pay attention to them when they're in. I'm not big on showing damsels too often unless it's a schooling type of damsel, but I wanted you to see this. This is the Starky Eye damsel. It is a deep water damsel that we don't have in very often. It is a beautiful damsel in that it looks like a dwarf angelfish. Extremely hardy when we get them. They can be a little bit more expensive than the average damsel because of the depth in which they're collected. And it takes a lot to bring them in, so you sometimes have to pay for that. But it is a fish that is very hardy. It can be very long-lived in an aquarium, and it is not super aggressive like a lot of other damsel species. So you definitely want to pay attention to this because it is not, I wouldn't call it rare, but it is a damsel we don't have in that often. My number 1 pick of the week, because this is my favorite goby personally, and we don't have it in that often, is the Randall's Prawn Goby. What I love about this goby is when I kept one in a reef tank, I kept it for 5 years, and it was still living when I tore my last reef tank down. They're very, very hardy goby. What makes it so cool, and I'm going to see if I can make him, this is a very young one. You can see that top dorsal fin. Wow. It's an instant wow factor. It readily takes food. It will build a little hollow inside one of the base of some live rock. Every single one of these that I've sold over the years in service accounts have done extremely well. It is such a showy fish. I could just talk about it. But it is for the money my number 1 goby pick, other than the twin spot goby that's right behind it. These are 2 spotted dorsal gobies that kind of mimic crabs to kind of keep predators from eating them. But again, the Randall's Prawn Goby, my number 1 goby of all. We haven't had them in a couple of weeks. Baby blue tangs are back in stock. This for me because Rico blue tangs are very ick prone. Sometimes the best time to start them in an aquarium is when they're little like this, and they haven't had the opportunity to have a hard time adjusting from coming in from the wild. And I like honestly starting all fish at a really young stage and just letting them grow in a tank. One, because you can get more fish into a tank, given the fact that you can't stock heavy with saltwater a lot of times. And two, it just eases the fish into a more aquatic environment where it can get all of its experience from being inside a tank, not in the wild. So a great fish if you're in the market for a Regal Blue Tang. I've got young ones, and of course they're cheaper because they're smaller. Okay, we kind of jumped right into the video without doing a whole long monologue or anything like that, because I had a lot of fish I wanted to show you. We sold so many saltwater fish last week that we were really very empty on Monday, and I only showed you a nth of what we have. Fruit Loop did a great job ordering a bunch of fish this week. We got in a lot of different things. I just tried to give you some of the highlights of what we got in the video this week. So have a wonderful week, God bless, and I hope to see you here this weekend. Come check out the fish.